Well, welcome to Bible study for this morning. So we are going to be in Habakkuk today. I did pronounce that right, didn't I? Habakkuk. There we go. So welcome to Bible study with us. All right. Get that up a little bit more. Oh, let's see. Why don't you start off with the announcement? So starting next week, we're going to be a half an hour earlier.
Oh no! Oh, Wednesday's okay.
So just 10:30. So 10:30, 11:30, because we're going to do Advent services at 11:30. So
At 11:30 or 12? Well, 11:30.
11:30, because that way then people.
Okay.
And then I'll have some stuff for you to eat after that. So come for the day.
I won't be here, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
That's
That's the fun day.
2 days,
Yes.
3 days here.
3 days of fun. So I'll have, I'll do probably just something simple for the meal. We'd probably just do some soup or something. So soup and bread. So you know me, that'll turn into something more extravagant. So we'll see what happens.
Soup and bread are fine.
So let's read through our church signs for this week. So next week, 10:30, we're going to start instead of 11. So
Advent already, I can't believe it.
I know Advent just showed up on you. Just like, what? So, and before I forget, I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving this week. Have a safe Thanksgiving. So, all right. So for our signs, God wants full custody, not just weekend visits. I like that one. Worry about your own sins. God won't ask you about anyone else's. That's something true too, yes. The Lord's gifts are never loans. They are direct deposits. I like that one. So, God will tell you the way to go, but you have to do the walking. So that's a good one too. Worry ends where faith begins. And you can't pay for your sins with cash or credit. Try PrayPal as opposed to PayPal. PrayPal. So, awesome. So let's, as we've been doing the last couple weeks, I've been enjoying this, just catching up with you guys and seeing how everything's been going. Just go around the room and see how everybody's doing, how there are good things or bad things they want to talk about, or any Thanksgiving plans as well too. So, who wants to start?
I got a joke.
Okay, let's go with the joke.
Oh, the pastor was sitting there, and a guy walked in, and he said, "Where's the number one hog?" Oh, the other guy said, "We don't call our pastor a hog. You better leave." And he said, "I was going to donate $10,000. The guy said, "Oh, Parky's just walking in the door."
So today, next Wednesday, so Sunday actually is the first. I know this is weird, being in November, because I always associate December with Advent, but next Sunday is the first Sunday in Advent. So, so we are talking about that. So as we talk about Habakkuk, let me get to my notes about it. So it's the 8th book of the 12 minor prophets. So what does minor prophets mean? What does that mean when you hear that word? What should you think? Something that I am not? Short. Minor prophets means it's short.
Oh, short.
It's short.
Yeah.
I'm long-winded, so it's short. So just remember, if you think of a major prophet, they're long-winded like I am. If it's a minor prophet, they're short. So the book is not very long. So it's believed to have been composed in the late 7th century BC. So when you think of that time period, what are some of your thoughts? Because we know 7 BC pretty well. What are some of your thoughts of? So it goes along with what you were thinking of. What's one big event in the life of the people of Israel?
Babylon and
The exile. Yes.
exile, yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of stuff got written around the time of the exile to Babylon. And why do you think that was written? Why was there so much written around this time? Why do you think?
Things were so bad.
Yeah, things were so bad, and they're trying to rationalize to themselves. So this is so you got to look at the way the people of Israel looked at themselves. They never said, "Why is this your fault?" They always looked at problems like, "Why is this our fault? What did we do to deserve this? What did we do to God to deserve this fate that we're going through?" So it's a little different mindset. So it's a different shift where I think in society nowadays people would blame somebody else. Well, you made me do this, and this is your fault that I am in this situation, which is I don't agree with. But the people of Israel thought of it in a different sense. What have we done? And so there's a lot of soul searching at that time. They're thinking to themselves, what have we done to deserve this fate? To deserve to be in exile, to be away from home, to be not being not having that promise that God always promises us, not having the land. And so that's what this was written about. The first 2 chapters of the book are a dialogue between God and the prophet. The message that just live by God's faith plays an important role in Christian thought. That message is actually found in Paul's book to the Romans, as well as Paul's book to the Galatians, and to the Hebrews as well too. So this was a big point for Paul, to live by faith, and so we'll talk about that today. Interesting enough, a copy of these chapters was included in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So this is something that people have been. This book has been something that people have been latching onto and reading for a very long time. So the Dead Sea Scrolls are very old, but that shows you their impact. So this text that we're reading today has a big impact on folks.
I thought it could really apply to today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What's going on?
And I think that's why it speaks so like even to the people in the Dead Sea Scrolls, because that was around the time of the Roman occupation and stuff like that, and what was going on with them. And so I think it definitely speaks to that. Let's see. I think those were the. So the other part you'll notice in here is they might use chatelains. You might see that in the book. It's Chaldeans. That's another word for Babylonians. So if you see that when we're reading through the text, just know that's another reason. That's just what the Babylonians were called. And as you know, the Babylonians are the ones that took the people of Israel, took them back to their land. So that's, again, there's a big... So I think it's hard for us sometimes to comprehend that. So that you were living where you were living at, and then for a generation or two, suddenly you were forced from your home. You had to live in a totally different place against your will before you could come back. And then all the dynamics to go between the people who are coming back and the people who are already there. So I think this is sometimes hard for us to note, but this is why people are so grief-stricken at this point. So just think if your family has lived in Baldwin all of your life, and then all of a sudden your kids and your grandkids get stripped away from here, and against their will they have to live in Iowa City. That would be, I know, for a lot of folks that would be really horrible, because this is where you're from. This is where you know people here, right? You know whose house that used to be. You had school memories here. You have all this stuff here. And then suddenly being ripped from that without your consent, without your desire, and being placed somewhere else is very traumatic. And like I said, that's again why we're reading this. And so that's where the text is coming out today. And we're going to talk about in the midst of this hopelessness, we're going to talk about hope. So any questions so far?
Would you say Habakkuk was lamenting?
Yeah.
Isn't that
I absolutely.
how it's written?
Yeah, it definitely would be a lament. And we're also going to see Habakkuk also gives us permission to be mad at God. And that's something that I know in some different Christian denominations, they're like, well, you can't be mad at God. But we have scriptural evidence that when we read this first part, Habakkuk's really pretty not happy right now with God. He lays it all out there, and he's like, boom, 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 boom. So I think it's interesting that you have a scriptural precedent for someone saying, hey, God, what the heck are you doing? What are you doing? You need to fix this, because this is just wrong. And so you hear that anger in the text for today. So let's start in chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Who would like to read that?
The prophecy that Habakkuk the prophet received. How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen, or cry out to you violence, but you do not save? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds. Therefore the law is paralyzed, and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the wicked what? The wicked hem in the righteous.
Surround.
Hem in. Surround. Hem in.
Yep.
Hem down.
Hemmed in.
So that justice is perverted.
Yep. Chapter 2, 1 through 4.
Chapter 2.
Yep. 1 through 4. Yep.
See which Bible I want to read it out of. I will stand at my watch post and station myself on the rampart. I will keep watch to see what he will say to me and what he will answer concerning my complaint. Then the Lord answered me and said, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so that a runner may read it. For there is still a vision for the appointed time. It speaks of the end and does not lie. If it seems to tarry, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Look at the proud. Their spirit is not right in them, but the righteous live by faith.
And then I'm going to do 17 through 19. I don't know if we'll talk about 3b to 6. So chapter 3, 17 to 19. Though the fig tree does not blossom, and no fruit is on the vines, though the produce of the olive fails, and the field yields no food, though the flock is cut off from the fold, and there is no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will exult in the God of my salvation. God the Lord is my strength. He gives me my feet like the feet of a deer, and makes me tread upon the heights. To the choir master with stringed instruments. So what do you notice about this particular text? And let me pair it. So I'm going to pair it with the other text. Let me pair it with the gospel. I don't do this always with you guys, but here's the gospel text for that day, for Sunday. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to his disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took with them Peter and the two sons of Zebedee and began to be grieved and agitated. And he said to them, I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me. That's what the gospel lesson is. So what are your thoughts as you think of these texts?
Sounds kind of hopeless, I think.
Yeah. Let's that part you read, Louise.
Yeah.
How long shall I cry for help, and you will not listen? He accuses God. Yeah.
This one.
Or no crops, evidently. The fig tree does not bud, and the grapes aren't on the vine, and the olive crop has failed. What else have they got?
Right.
No labor force.
In some sense, it really reminds us of today, too. If you think of the people in terms of food, if we think of the scarcity that we have of food, I don't know if you've been noticing, too, some of the grocery stores are sort of strategically placing their products, so they're not necessarily to make sure the shelves don't look barren. But that's been going on. So we actually do have shortages.
Pandemic time.
Yeah. You remember what it looked like in the pandemic time, right? I took pictures of that. I mean, I remember we went to Cub. We went down, the kids wanted ramen noodles. There was nothing in the Asian section. Nothing. There wasn't soy sauce. There wasn't anything. You know, have you ever seen that before in your guys'
Toilet
life?
paper? I've never seen that. I mean, you know, they're stacked up, but they weren't during the pandemic.
No.
Another thing they do for eye level
Yep.
is that the most expensive.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I remember going to a soup aisle and where they always had tons of soup. Instead, they had it filled with crackers to go with the soup.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think, like I said, it's, you know, when we hear this text for today, it very much is right now, you know, and I think that's why this text resonates so much with communities, because I think there's a lot of times of when there's uncertainty, especially and food is something that we all need, right? We all need to eat. And that is a big deal to us when we can't eat or we can't get the food that we need. You know how.
But think how much more we have than some people,
Oh.
some
Yeah.
countries.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I could live a long time on just what I have in the house in the basement, and canning and.
Exactly.
But every week I go to the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we read through this text, though, you can really see Habakkuk is really sort of pushing God. You know, violence, and you will not save. Why do you make me see wrongdoing and look at the trouble? Why do you show me all this violence that's happening in front of me? Why do I get to see people that are not doing the right thing? And why do the wicked surround the righteous? Why do the good people in the world get, lambasted by these people that are not good people? These evil people. These people that, that this shouldn't happen to them, but these evil people are winning the legal battles. These evil people are not allowing these good people to live their best life. Why do you allow that to happen? So I think you could make a case right now. I think when we say violence, we can think of the war in Ukraine, right? What other sort of violence do you see right now that makes you feel hopeless right now? What other type of violence do you notice?
Shootings.
Shootings.
Just after guns.
Yeah.
Like in Red Wing.
What was Red Wing?
Red Wing right down where Troy unloads his truck, right down in the coal yard.
Yeah, down
Yep.
on the waterfront.
People watched it out of their windows, couldn't believe
What
it.
was that?
I don't know that.
No, I don't know about that.
Well,
Shooting.
I don't know if they know really what happened, but
Well, I think this, I don't know, the police officer was trying to stop this car, it was crazy. So they slammed into the police car, then they got
and shot
out.
him.
They started fighting, and the guy drew his gun and was gonna shoot the cop, and the cop shot the guy. But he's gonna be okay.
But I don't think they know exactly what
Why
Why?
he did this, no,
Right.
Yeah.
no, not at all.
I just read today too, I think that there was one in a Walmart, but I don't know where, that a lot of people.
Chesapeake,
Yeah.
Virginia.
Virginia.
And you,
6 people were
Didn't hear
killed.
about
Yeah.
that one.
Oh, really?
It was just this morning I read it and I
Yeah.
hadn't heard the
Heard it on
details
TV.
yet.
It's so crazy, why do these young people think they can
I don't,
swing these guns around and shoot whatever they want? It doesn't make any sense.
well, in some sense, so the bigger question is how are they feeling right now? Do they have a sense of purpose? Do they have a sense of hope? If you are hopeless,
Yeah.
then what does it matter what does life matter if you are hopeless?
Yeah.
And so, my personal views are, I think we as a society are becoming more and more hopeless. And when people are hopeless, when people are desperate, they will make some pretty bad decisions because they don't. There's like, how's it going to get any worse? I mean, if that's the way you live your life right now, to say what could get worse than what's happening right now, that shows you what level of where they're at and how hard it is for them to see something good. Very much like the people of Israel at this particular point in time. They're like, how could it get any worse? It's already horrible right now. It can't get any worse than this. And so I think this is why this text latches onto us so much time, because there's a lot of times, whether we want to admit it or not, there are times when we feel very hopeless as a person, as a community, as a nation. And so I think this is what this text is saying. So this is what Habakkuk starts with. He starts right out of the gates. We don't get very much of anything, right? We don't get a lot of descriptions or anything like that. Habakkuk right out of the gate. God, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Because this sucks. And he lays it straight out to God. And then God gets us into chapter 2 and then says, write the vision. Make it plain on tablets so that a runner may read it. For there is still a vision for the appointed time. It speaks of the end, and it does not lie. If it seems to tarry, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Look at the proud. Their spirit is not right in them, but the righteous live by their faith. And that's the text that the Apostle Paul took out. So, and so as you look at that text, what do you think, especially if we look at verse 3, for there is still a vision for the runner, for there is a vision for the appointed time. It speaks of the end and does not lie. What is that? What do you think God means by the end? So when you hear the end in that text, what do you think God is asking or thinking, having us look at? What is the end?
When the captivity is over.
Okay. Yeah. When
Yeah.
captivity is over.
And he's coming back for us.
Yeah, absolutely. What else could the end mean?
End of time?
End of time, yeah. End of the world, yeah. And unfortunately, the language there doesn't give us very much help. There's not, so as we look at the Hebrew in there, it doesn't really help us at all. It doesn't. Sometimes we get lucky when we have sort of this quandary about a word. We can look at the Hebrew and it gives us some ideas, but this one it doesn't. So it's very nebulous on what the end means. But what does it mean for you to know that there is an end? In whatever sense of the word you want to take it. What does that mean for you?
We'd be living our best, or if the end of time was coming, I guess I would try to do what's right.
Okay. Yeah.
Or would you say, forget it?
Yeah.
What difference is it going to make?
Yeah. That's another way to look at it. Yes, absolutely.
There's a song that I learned many years ago. It will be worth it all when we see Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And if it did mean the end of that captivity, then there would be the fact that there should be joy, because it will end.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does it mean in your life to know that there will be an end? Again, I'll let you figure out the context of what that means, but this is a response from God to all of us, not just here. Because like I said, this has been highlighted in the New Testament several times. This is something the Apostle Paul really took home with him and wanted to make sure everybody knew about this. So that's why Paul wrote it 3 times. Because Paul's pretty wordy. But yet this is something he wanted to make sure everybody who was a Christian would know. That the righteous live by their faith. So what do you think about the end in terms of yourself?
Don't you think, do you think that this, I think that it's every day or every year, like, we're getting closer to when he comes back, of
Yep.
course. But it seems now that it's really close with all the floods, with all the fires, with all the
Yeah.
destruction, with our values are sinking quickly.
Yeah, it could be responding to that. Yeah, how do we live our lives knowing that we are in the end times? You know, how do we live our lives like that? Because I was trying to think of who I was talking to this last week, and we were talking just real briefly. And they're a workaholic like I'm a workaholic. And they're like, and we were just talking about stuff, and they're like, you know, so they're getting better, but they're like, so when am I going to start living my life? You know, because I think a lot of times we sort of do stuff, just sort of fill our time as opposed to living our lives.
They sort of put it aside.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can, well, I'll do this much work because I don't want to, you know, I think a lot of times people don't feel empowered to live their best life.
There's that country song that says, "Live like you are dying.
Yes,
Go do the things you want to do."
absolutely. Absolutely. And I wonder if people started living like that, you know, have in some sense that gives you a sense of hope too, right? Because you are living. So if you would die tomorrow, do you feel like you've lived what you want to live?
I think of Ken and his dad.
Mm-hmm.
They were farmers, and that's all they did.
Yep.
They had no hobby, nothing.
Yeah.
And now Ken is, you know, just sitting, and he doesn't play bingo, and he did play a little basketball or something, and he got 5 little coins yesterday, but he doesn't want to do anything
Right.
because he doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
he worked constantly.
Yeah. So that'll be my thing for you for this week, is I want you guys to think about, because it's not too late. It's not too late. You know, are you living the life you want to live? Have you done what you want to do? If not, why not? And how can you do it? What do you feel like you need to do right now?
There's a lot of things I'd like to do, but my leg holds me back.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, how do you do, so there's those things that you want to do. What are some ways, even in spite of that, could you do what you want to do and need to do? What are those things that you need to have done? So for me, one of those things was I needed to have written a script. That was one of the things in my life that I wanted to do before I died. And for 10 years, I bought plenty of books. I read all about the theories and how stuff worked, and I maybe would get 5 pages into the script, and then it would be done. I couldn't think anymore. And finally, a couple of years back, I was like, I need to do this. I need to get this done. This is what I need to do for me to feel. That's on my bucket list, so I want to do that. So I bought a particular course. It was an expensive one, but he handheld you through the whole process. And I still remember the one. So it's 20 days. You write 5 pages over each day for 20 days to write this script. And I was almost in tears when I was done writing that script. The script is horrible. Just to say that. I'll just say that out loud. The script is horrible. But the process, I had never thought I would ever get to the point where I'd have a finished script. And I do. But it's taking the time and saying, okay, what is that thing that's really important to me? How do I go about living that? How do I have faith that God's going to, allow me to do what I need to do? And how do I do that in a sense of hopelessness? And that's what you're sort of seeing with that last part of the text, when he says, the fig tree does not blossom, no fruit is on the vine, so the produce of the olives fall, and the field yields no food. Though the flock is cut off from the fold, and there's no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. So even though things are going badly, things aren't going the way that you want them to do, there's no hope, yet there's hope. So how, looking ahead for this week, how do you see that in your own life? How do you work through that sense of hopelessness that we all get from time to time? That's part of the human condition. So, what do you think?
I think I've done what I wanted to do, really,
Good.
except write my obituary.
Okay.
Louise and I have that same problem. Did you get yours done?
So that's something you want to do, though, right?
It is something I need to do.
Okay. What's the
Yep.
barriers from stopping you from doing that?
Laziness, I guess, I don't know.
I think it's hard to do.
Okay.
Oh, I did it
You did it?
today.
You did it today?
Did you?
Signed it, everything
Okay.
for today.
Awesome. Well, maybe we need to have an obituary writing class.
Well, it is important because your family, you think they know where you came from, but they don't.
But they don't.
right.
It's your early life.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
my daughter-in-law told me if the thing that would help them the most is to have an obituary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't even, well, I do know. Like,
So we'll do that in January. Well, that's a need I see that you need, and I'm going to invite you all. We'll have an afternoon after church, and you'll get to write your obituary. How do you feel about that?
It'll be nice when it's done.
Okay. Does that feel like something you can do?
I just came last week or so ago from my sister-in-law's funeral, and she was a tremendous singer. She had a beautiful voice, and I said it was unique because she just died in last July, I think it was. She and my brother had sat down and had written her funeral practically, and she all made a video of part of it, and part of it was her singing some of the last. And I was hoping they would do something like that because I just wanted to hear Pearl sing another time, and so she was on that, and then she had John 3:16 picked out as her verse, and the pastor kind of gave his. Well, he said it was the obituary, but it just things that he had with them as a family, and it was very unique. It was very stirring.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think
Today
that
I signed all the paperwork.
nobody
for
wants
a
to hear
will.
me sing.
Yeah. No, it's good to get. Yeah, it's hard sometimes. That's sort of that finality that we have when you sign your stuff for your funeral or your obituary, and the way that I look at it is, with your obituary, you can still keep adding on. Obituary is where you're at in that period of time. You can always add on. There's.
Because during the war, my dad wrote a poem.
Yep.
That was on the obituary.
Yeah.
Oh,
That would have been nice, yeah. To have that poem so everybody can hear, read about what your dad wrote about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's neat. So I put it in my notes. So in January, we will have an obituary writing class. So
What if nobody shows up?
then no one shows up. So, but in some sense, that's sort of playing off of what we're talking about today, is that how do you have hope? And if you look at those things in your life that you are avoiding doing, there's a reason why you're avoiding doing them. And is it because you? What what do you need God to help you in terms of faith around that? So, we'll just use the obituary writing class. If that's something you're like, well, no, I don't think I can do that. What's the reason? That's a question I'd ask myself, is say, okay, I can't go to that class because it'll make me think of my mortality. Okay, you're right. It'll make you think of mortality. And at the same time, Habakkuk is reminding us there's faith. There's hope. That even in times when we feel hopeless, that there's still hope because we have God. And God is that faith. So when we have a class so Mickey, we're talking about having an obituary writing class in January. So if you want to write your obit, we'll do a class about that. So,
Sounds good.
and I'll even, if you want, you can just all handwrite them out, and I'll be happy to type them up for you. So, but yeah, so, but I think it's getting back to that point of thinking, what is that things that are those barriers in your life? Ask yourself, why are those barriers? How does faith help you overcome those barriers? So I want you to think about that this week. Because there's going to be times you're going to feel hopeless, because that's part of the human condition. How are you going to be able to use your faith? We sort of talked about this on Sunday. Faith trumps fear. Again, that's sort of what the same thing about faith is reminding us. So, the way you can say that, hope trumps fear. So, something to think about. Any other questions or thoughts about this text today before we get to our prayers for today?
I always say, I'm ready to go. I mean, I have accepted the Lord, but there's things that I want to see what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss out on anything again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's part of the human condition too. I mean, yeah. So again, think about those things that are what you want to do. Be honest with yourself. These are the things I need to do. What are the barriers holding you back from doing them? And then how do you use your faith to help you overcome those barriers? That might be roping some people in to help you. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's having the ability to say, hey, this is important to me. I need to do this for X, Y, or Z reason. So I can't wait to hear your list. What you want to do. So, or read all the obituaries. So, because I think that's the other, so on a side note, I think obituaries are really interesting because it gets you to, especially if you write them, we get to see what's important to you. The way you would write your obituary is going to be a lot different than how your kids write your obituary. And I think that's a wonderful gift to give your family, that they can see. And I'm not going to say it's always going to get printed in the paper because, they charge you an arm and a leg for those, but that's a side story. But to have that obituary that they could read through and see those things that you have felt are big accomplishments for you, I think is amazing, because we think we are projecting what we want others to know. But a lot of times that gets lost in sort of the noise around us. And so having that thing to say, one of the most amazing things of my life was I got to, go to Africa, or I got to win this swim meet, and this was the reason why. That was the most amazing thing in my life. Or one of these stories that really always defined who I was and how I worked in the world was, whatever that was. I think your family and friends are going to be like, wow, I didn't know that. And to have the ability to say that to them, I think it's amazing. So, all right. Well, that's enough of me preaching. So, any other things that you want to talk about for today? All right.
Thank you for joining us for this week's Bible study. At this point, we'll be praying. So please, if you have any prayers, please leave them in the comment section below, or let myself know or the office know, and we'll be happy to pray for you. Have a great Thanksgiving. Take care, and God bless.